Hi, my name's Chris and I'm going to walk you through Mi-DevEnv. Mi-DevEnv is a project launched on Codeplex to help you create virtual machines and load them with operating systems, software packages and software development tools in the fastest possible time. So what does Mi-DevEnv do? It creates virtual machines, complete with all the software and development tools that you as a developer or a tester are likely to need, like Visual Studio, Microsoft SQL Server, CRM, Microsoft Office and so on. And I'm currently working on alignment with the Auto SP installer. That's the Codeplex project which installs Microsoft SharePoint for you automatically. And I'll also be working with some people to get some K2 installations done for Black Pearl, Blackpoint and Smartforms. So watch out for them coming down the pipeline soon. In order to create the virtual machines at the moment, Mi-DevEnv interfaces with Microsoft Hyper-V, but coming soon we'll have a VMware interface as well. The virtual machines do need to have a Windows operating system in them, and the virtual machine host, that can be either Server 2008, Server 2012 or Windows 8, as they're your options to run a Hyper-V platform. The mission of Mi-DevEnv is basically to make virtual machine setup simple, have it made flexible, so that, for example, you need SQL Server, but you might need sometimes to use version 2008, you might need to use 2008 with a service pack, or 2008 R2, or even SQL 2012 or Express. So you get flexibility around the operating system, the products and the versions that you can install. And as Mi-DevEnv is basically an automated installation system, it's completely extensible. The installers that install these software packages, the mission for those is to do all of the heavy lifting. That means total configuration. So for example, we have an installation package which creates a domain controller for you. We have another installation package which creates a web server which joins that machine to the domain. And then the other installation packages are about installing products or installing things like development tools. When something like Microsoft CRM gets installed automatically, the purpose of that installation package is to create all of the service accounts, organizational units and group memberships that are needed for a successful installation. So quite literally, using this system, you could write one line of PowerShell, and that PowerShell line will create you a virtual machine and install all of the software, operating system packages and so on that you need without you having to do any interactive key presses, input of options or anything. You literally run the one line and a couple of hours later you can log in and your environment's ready to use. So let's just have a very quick look at the kind of architecture which I've used to put Mi-DevEnv together. The mission of Mi-DevEnv being to create virtual machines as quickly as possible. What we've done is taken the approach of using a base template, so that's some kind of virtual machine that's set up one time with something like Windows Server 2008 R2 or Windows Server 2012, and that base template then is used to create a new virtual machine, and then Mi-DevEnv installs an operating system and all of the requested packages onto that machine for you. In order to do that, we basically have Mi-DevEnv in the middle here as the kind of tool set at your disposal. And at the moment, the best way to drive Mi-DevEnv is from what I'm calling a request script. That's the script which you can run, which will remove a virtual machine if it already exists, and then create it and install all of your software. So this request script may, for example, create a number of virtual machines which form a test environment. So the mission of the request script would be to tear down that environment, i.e. delete all the virtual machines and then recreate them so that you have a clean test environment, and you can then do all of your automated or system or user acceptance testing from that point forward. So that request script and Mi-DevEnv itself is all based upon Microsoft PowerShell. So Mi-DevEnv then sits over your virtualization host, at the moment Hyper-V, and then coming down the pipe later on VMware. So Mi-DevEnv basically orchestrates all of the commands that are needed to create the virtual machine in your virtualization host, and then once that machine is up and running inside that virtual machine, it gets on with the business of installing the operating system and packages, again all automatically. So here's a couple of lines from the test script which is published with Mi-DevEnv. That test script you can have a look at a little bit later on. But simply these two lines, the first removes the machine if it exists, and the machine in this case is called MDEDC, that's Mi-DevEnv domain controller, as a test VM. I say confirm false, so I don't want any interaction, I don't want it to ask me are you sure. I'm saying yep, tear the machine down if it exists, then create the machine. Verbose will give us some really nice trace messages about what's going on, like network settings, the memory that's supplied to the machine and so on. So again, here's the name of the machine that we're creating. And then we're telling Mi-DevEnv to use a drive template, and this is this base template that we've talked about earlier. And the base template is called MDE Server 2008 R2. So you can guess which operating system's being used inside that base template. So there's the machine name, and there's the template that the machine will be based upon. By default, Mi-DevEnv uses the base template as a differencing disk. So every machine that's created from that template, a new file is created, and any differences between that virtual machine and the base template are stored in that file. So if the base template was maybe, let's say, 48 gigabytes, you could have any number of virtual machines based on that template using the minimal amount of disk space. So after we've said what the machine's called, what the operating system, or base template rather, is going to be used, then we say what packages need to be installed. And this is a simple example of how to create a domain controller, and this is saying use the domain controller settings for a domain controller based on 2008 R2 operating system. So there we can see in 2 lines I can create myself a domain controller, and sometime later, not very long, that machine will be ready to use and I won't have had to make any more additional inputs. So the purpose of the walkthrough today is to help you consider the key topics and complete the key tasks of getting ready to use Mi-DevEnv. So first of all, we have to prepare an installation source. That means extracting installation files from CDs, DVDs, ISO files, self-extracting zip files and so on. Then you prepare a virtual machine home folder or root folder, and in that root folder you'll have a template folder which holds the base machine images, a machine folder which has the virtual machine configuration files in, and then a drive folder, and that's the folder that holds the virtual drives for each of the virtual machines that you create. So once you have the installation files from Codeplex, you'll then need to configure Mi-DevEnv, and that means setting parameters, logging your product keys in a file so that Mi-DevEnv can use those product keys to activate your software. And then after you've configured Mi-DevEnv, then you'll create your base template. So you'll create yourself a Windows server, for example, or a Windows 8 or Windows 7 client. And once you've installed the operating system, you basically run a Mi-DevEnv script which sets an execution trigger and then shuts that template down. And then you'll copy that template, store it in a safe place, and every virtual machine which is then created based on that template, when it's switched on, the machine will automatically sysprep itself and install all of the requested packages. Once those base templates are created, you can then start to run test scenarios. So as I said, in a few moments I'll show you a test script in PowerShell, and in that test script you'll see it removes virtual machines that may exist and then it recreates them. So the first thing you're going to want to do is prepare an installation source. That means creating an installation root folder, and then inside that folder creating a particular folder for each product or development tool that you want to use, and then copying the installation files from the DVD or self-extracting file or ISO image into that folder. The purpose of the installation route is that all of the virtual machines that you create in future, when Mi-DevEnv fires up inside those virtual machines, it needs to know where to go to get the installation files. And our parameter file, which we mentioned a few moments ago, tells it where to go to get these files. So let's take a look now at what the installation files setup looks like. So on my machine, what I've done is, this is a server 2012 with Hyper-V running here in the background. My installation folder is on my C drive under a folder called installation, and then beneath that I've created another folder called install files. In install files then you can see product folders like CRM, Exchange 2010 and Exchange 2013, another folder for K2 products which will be dealt with later on, different versions of Office, different versions of SQL, different versions of SharePoint, and so on. So basically what I've done is create a folder for each of these products and versions and extracted all of the installation files into that particular folder, so that ultimately I end up with the setup executable also immediately available. What I've also done is I've gone to Codeplex and downloaded the Mi-DevEnv files, and I've put them in the same installation folder. The reason for that then is that when I share this folder on the network so that all of my future VMs can see it, all of my installation files and my Mi-DevEnv scripts are available from one source. So it's very easy just to manage this one single source of installation files and the Mi-DevEnv product itself. So that's basically how to set your installation files up. What you need to do next is then prepare your virtual machine folder, which means creating a folder as the root, and then within that creating a template folder, a machine folder, and a drive folder. The template folder is where all the base drive images are stored for the different operating systems that you're able to use. These templates are also available to be used as differencing disks. In the machine folder, this is where we store the machine configuration files and nothing else. And in the drive folder is where the individual virtual drives for each of the virtual machines is stored as well. So if we used a differencing disk, the differencing files are stored in this drive folder, whereas the template, the base drive, remains in the template folder. So let's have a look at how that folder is set up on my machine. What I've done on my machine is I've set up another folder called VM Store, and this has my production hard drives and production virtual machines in. So I want to make sure that my Mi-DevEnv files are in another location altogether. So in my VM Store folder, for example, I've created a Mi-DevEnv VM host folder, and in there my template folder, my machines folder, my drives folder. So in my templates folder, I've already created a Mi-DevEnv server 2008 R2, Mi-DevEnv server Windows 2012 server. And here now you can see the virtual drives for 3 virtual machines which my test script creates. Here's a domain controller, here's an application server, a web server with numerous products installed based on Windows Server 2008 R2. And here's another web server based on Server 2012. So once the virtual root folder is set up and our folder structure is created within that, we can go to Codeplex and from Codeplex bring down the recommended download. So we go to the Mi-DevEnv homepage. There's some quick reminders there about the Mi-DevEnv mission and so on. And if you go to downloads, you'll see the latest download there, which as I'm speaking to you today is what we've called Release Candidate 1. Here's the zip file. Download the zip file. And inside that zip file are all of the different Mi-DevEnv modules. So remember, Mi-DevEnv is a PowerShell based system, and PowerShell uses modules as a way of being able to present you with reusable code items. So in the folder we've got MDE host, which is the thing that talks to the virtualization host, MDE common, which is lots of functions which help Mi-DevEnv install and configure the operating systems and products, and the initialization folder, which is the thing which helps with the preparation of virtual machines. And this is also where I've stored the test script which I mentioned to you earlier. And this test script can be a reference source to show you how to write scripts to remove and create virtual machines. So once you've downloaded the file from Codeplex, what you'll need to do is copy the installation files, or copy the Mi-DevEnv files rather, out into the installation